Cool. Thank you very much for coming along today. This is a recorded online session as part of our 2026 intensive winter grazing workshops. So practical result from this workshop is that everyone here, this is just a recorded session that can be used online for those that either can't make workshops or are just in the area where one isn't. And so the goal is to just go through the rules, what's changed and where it's come from, and then there'll be a little bit of information about the grazing management plans and a little bit of talk from myself. So I'm Jack from the catchments team. We've also got Sophie from consents and Celeste Lane from compliance. And workshop format. So this is sort of what we have at the in-person session. So a bit more of a short presentation, which we'll go over just now, and then a Q&A session. And following that, there'll be another hour or so where our staff will be hanging around to go through management plans for anyone. So yeah, thank you. So just got the upcoming public sessions. So if you look at this and decide that you can actually make one of these in person or would like to come along, or you know someone that would like to, please forward these dates along. They're also available on the ORC Intensive Winter Grazing website. This is the look that we always get when the subject of council come to speak to you about your farming practices, other things come up. But this is the whole point of these workshops, to make these a lot easier, break it down, and sort of make a bit of sense of it, to see why we're doing it and why it really makes sense. So why do we focus on intensive winter grazing? So intensive winter grazing can generate large sediment losses, phosphorus and E. coli, mostly to waterways. And so the excess fine sediment is the #1 water quality problem in New Zealand, but it's actually a really easy thing that we can mitigate through some pretty easy management practices that we'll be going over here. There's a lot of research to back all this up. There were some research trials out of Telford focusing on dairy cow grazing over 5 years. So just from going from traditional grazing, cows entering at the lower end of a paddock, strip grazing in an uphill direction, no protection of critical source areas or adjacent areas to waterways, and no back fencing to limit stop movement. You can see there's quite a large loss of soil and phosphates and everything else, whereas just through simple strategic grazing, which is not too big a difference, you can see there's actually 90% less soil loss and 85% less phosphorus. So yeah, little things like this, and then you can sort of see right there the little differences if you're not familiar with strategic versus traditional grazing. Just sort of working towards waterways rather than away from them, sort of leaving that last bite of crop, sort of allowing a bit of a filter. This was also recreated in the Waitahuna sheep grazing trials on very similar projects, but then you could sort of see that over 3 years, going from that strategic to, or going from traditional to strategic grazing, you could see there was large changes. So yeah, with sheep grazing, it's 50% less phosphate, sediment, and E. coli, which was then to also see how it affected the actual runoff of the water, which is collected in these puddles there. So these combined effects, mean contaminated runoff was relatively low relative to the cattle graze one, but it still shows a significant reduction in strategic grazing. So just a couple of definitions before we kick into the rest of it. So intensive winter grazing, which is livestock grazed on an annual forage crop from the 1st of May to the 30th of September. And an annual forage crop is crop grazed in the place grown, which excludes pasture or crop grown for arable or horticultural land use. Sorry, I'll just add that person in. So yeah, intensive winter grazing rules are national rules implemented by the ORC, and in the past there's been a consent process, but that consent pathway does no longer exist. So as of the 25th of October 2024 and currently, there are minimum setbacks of 5 metres from any bed of any river, lake, wetland or drain, regardless of whether there's water in it at the time. We have no grazing within critical source areas. So we want maintaining ground cover over critical source areas with no cultivation or harvesting of annual forage crops. So yeah. So yeah, our key messages for the coming winter. So follow good management practices, including having a winter grazing management plan in place, which we are more than happy to help you with. If you don't have consent, try and meet the standards outlined in the permitted activities. But if you do have a consent, just follow those conditions of your existing resource consent, as these can provide certainty if there was to be a change coming up, which we don't know currently, but you never know with all the changes in the RMA and everything else. So as part of, I mentioned the winter grazing management plan. So this is just sort of just details your on-farm management with your grazing. So it has your your contact details, who's responsible. Then it goes through your management strategies and your mitigations you're sort of having in there to limit any effects of the environment. Sort of record changes that you've done as you've gone, things that you've learned, and sort of how you'll monitor activity and how that goes. And this is just a really good way of just having that down on paper. If something was to happen, you can show that you had everything thought out, and some things just happen. And that's a great way that you can show to anyone that comes to have a look. Also, this is a really good way if you're going on holiday or heading away for a weekend, or changing, passing this one of your staff, so that everyone can see the same plan to be on the same page. It's a really simple form, just goes and shows how much land you're using, where you're doing it, and it has a lot of examples, so you can sort of see the sort of things you need to be writing. So it's really not too hard to go through, and again, at all of the in-person sessions, we're more than happy to sit there and go through it with you. Or someone can actually, if they're out in your area, can pop in and have a bit of a chat as well, which we're more than happy to do. So yes, again, so it's a very simple thing. You also have typically have a whole farm map which shows which paddocks you'll be grazing throughout the coming winter, and then individual paddock plans. So these just sort of show your risks, like your areas of slope, critical source areas, any waterways or wetlands. Show your proposed mitigation. So if you're putting any buffer zones, which ways you'll be strategically grazing, or any fences or back fencing you'll be doing. Also show other locations of other things, so where your water troughs are going to be, whether they're portable or not, and any gateways or shelter, just things that are kind of relevant to the overall management. And then there's also sort of a big list of mitigations, sort of things that you can be doing, because it's sometimes really hard to sort of tell what those things are, because they're things that you are just doing already, but it's just making sure that you sort of get those down, because you want that kind of recorded for whatever happens in future, and to show that you are doing good work if you're doing it. But yeah, so that's all just on the form, so you can sort of go through that and also just add your own if you've got other ones. So we'll just go through a couple of the risk areas associated with winter grazing, and then we'll just about be heading towards the end anyway. So critical source areas, we've heard me talk about that a few times, so I'll go over that properly now. So that is a landscape feature that accumulates runoff and, which is key, can deliver contaminants to waterways. So if you've got sort of a low point in a paddock that doesn't lead anywhere, that's not technically a critical source area, whereas something that then can find a way to a waterway, that's sort of the way you look at that. So yeah, management options for that: fence off with a temporary fence or permanent to exclude stock. Avoid cultivation, only graze during periods of extended dry weather if it's of higher risk. And try to keep a last bite of crop adjacent to it to grazers at the end of winter, just to allow that to have a bit more of a filter. Critical source areas can look from anything from just a bit of a low wet area in your paddock all the way through to this gully that you see there. So while you're probably not going to be cultivating that gully, it's just good to know how it can differ. And you can sort of tell which where the critical source area is based off, when it rains, it's the area that kind of gets wet. And yes, as it rains more, that area would be larger, but you've got to have a bit of practicality and sort of have a bit of a look at that. And, you know your land the best, so you'll probably know best what that is. But again, we're always happy to come out and have a chat if you want a bit of more certainty around that. Cool. Waterways. So again, this is what we're trying to exclude sediments and any other contaminants getting into. So Management options, fencing off to exclude stock, temporary or permanent where appropriate, preferably leaving buffers of at least 5 metres between any winter crop and any waterways. And strategically graze areas close to the waterway at the end of winter. Again, allow that as that buffer for as long as possible. And you can see here, people always ask, how strict do you have to be on the 5 metres? That is the rule and that's what it is. But as you can see here, this sort of moves along. You see this person's sort of gone through and done their relevant straight fence, because you can't always move it fully, but as you can see, they've done quite a good job here. Cool. And slopes. So slopes one that comes up a lot, as it used to be one of the main triggers for the rules. And that's just because, higher the slope, higher the risk. So this is sort of where, as you rain, everything flows down the slope to your critical source areas, to your waterways. So, possible management options. Implement that strategic grazing. So top to bottom, leaving the last bite, leaving the steepest areas and grass rather than cultivating. And I'd say alongside that, matching your stock classes. Obviously, your heavier stock classes on your to your less slopes. Just to make it a little bit easier. And then, adjacent to watercourses, the steeper the slope, potentially, then the wider the setback could potentially be. Cool. And then, areas of soil pugging and damage. So we're talking about, where your permanent troughs are, if you're doing quite sort of strict back fencing sort of areas, or around gates and other walkways. So, ways to manage that. Temporarily moving to an adjacent sacrifice paddock during predicted adverse weather. Matching, stock class, soil type or land type based on risk. Bigger break sizes to give stock more room to spread out. Back fencing and portable troughs in more appropriate situations. And direct drilling of minimum tillage when establishing crops is always quite good to prevent that soil erosion. So that's the end of the catchment advisor part of this session. So if you don't know the catchment advisors, there's one in sort of every rural area in Otago and urban, but we're more than happy to come out to talk to you about waterways, fencing, stock, funding, all kinds of things. If you don't know us, we're all on the website, so you're more than happy to contact us individually or go through our email or phone. Thank you. We've got a wee chat from compliance now. Celeste would like to take over. But thank you.
Thanks, Jack. I'm Celeste. I'm a Senior Compliance Officer based out of Central Otago, but seem to find myself in every corner of the region these days. From compliance, our winter season starts with winter flyovers. There's been a bit of a misconception that we have our own little plane and we fly around and we spy on everyone. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources for that, and it wouldn't really be as effective in what we need it to do. So we use it for surveillance and observation of a really wide range of activities. We have about 6 throughout a season, 2 in each sort of north, central and south Otago. Throughout the season, we try to get them up in May and July, so the 2 sort of turning points of winter. They are a really effective tool for us to cover a very large amount of area in a short amount of time. Obviously we look at intensive winter grazing, but we look at stock exclusion, earthworks activities, gravel extraction and forestry activities and how they interact with the waterways. We also go and do a lot of observations for our science teams and our other data teams on reservoir levels, dam levels, what the wetlands are looking like, and estuary outlets as well. Last year, can I get a slide change? Is it going to let me do it? Or Jack? There we go. Thank you. Last year, we made a really conscious effort to make sure that after the flyovers, we went through and did a very thorough desktop triage of all the photos we took. So for one flyover, this was a screenshot of all the waypoints that I took during the flyover. We can take up to 200 photos or 300 photos. You're covering hundreds of kilometers in a short amount of time. So you end up having end up having quite a lot to go through. But this was a really good process to get peer reviewed and helped us to actually identify whether we thought there was a breach or not. A lot of the time from the air, something can look really bad and then you get on ground and it doesn't look like anything. Or when you look at the photos again, you're actually going, oh, maybe I just saw a green patch rather than actually seeing a possible breach. From that process, we then go and match all the photos with the properties using GPS tracking and a range of mapping tools. From there, we try and get in touch with the landowners to arrange for a site visit. More often than not, like I just said, we think we see something from the air and we don't, when we get on site, there's not much. But what we've found is that we don't know what is going on site until we're on the property. We don't know what farm practices are already in place, whether intensive winter grazing plans are already in place, and we don't know what risk mitigation they've got that they normally use anyway. So it's been really important for us to try and get the landowners or the farm managers on site with us while we're there to talk through the practices and to talk through everything else. And to do that, we're trying our best to get in touch. Unfortunately, a lot of the letters didn't get a response to, but because we are all warranted officers, we will be using them this year as once we've tried to get in touch, the date that's on the letter or on the notification, we will be trying to come to site on those days, and we will be following due process to do so. So that takes us to our next point of what to expect from a site visit. So all site visits that we'd carry out, we do an education first approach. All compliance visits, we do an education first approach. With the Clarkson Farm reference, the rules have changed half a dozen times in the last half a dozen years, and it is incredibly frustrating for both farmers and or other members of the rural communities and rural professionals to try and keep up with them. So we are completely understanding of this, and we are there first and foremost to work with landowners to apply and assess the rules in a practical and a manageable and reasonable way. So we take the education first approach. When we come on site, we present a warrant and all the photos taken during flyovers. The warrant can be a little bit intimidating sometimes, but it is just a means to show that we are environmental officers. We are there for a compliance reason, and if you receive a visit from an ORC person looking for compliance and they haven't got a warrant, maybe look into what vehicle they were driving up the driveway. But otherwise, we'll go through, take all the photos, or take the photos with us so that you can see what we're trying to look at. These photos will also be provided in the notification before. We will provide an explanation of what we'd like to look at on site and all the relevant rules, including the interpretation of the rules. Sometimes it's pretty easy to write a rule down and think it's black and white on paper, but when you get on site, it's a little bit trickier to understand. So we make sure that we explain everything that we can. We'll often ask about the farm practice and mitigation measures in place, about what you do in a high rainfall event if you get unexpected snow and then snow melt, what the practice is on how many hours you're running them on the forage crops versus on the runoff blocks or the dry off blocks, those sorts of things. We're not trying to be nosy, we're just trying to understand the practice that's happening on farm, and it gives us a really good insight into the environmental awareness that farmers have and that landowners have. We'll then ask to go and observe the area that the photos were taken during the flyover and take photos of this area. And when we see whatever we come across, we'll discuss these findings with you and provide any explanation of whether there's a breach or not. Most of the time, 90% of the time that I've been on farm, I haven't seen anything that breaches the rules. Again, everything looks worse from the air when you're traveling at 200 k's an hour. So definitely want to try and take the pressure off, but it's always worth getting our boots on the ground. We don't, the farmer and the landowner will always know their property better than we do, and they will always know what will work best in their surrounding environments, because it is your livelihoods, it is, you're in it every single day, and often we're looking for the education on our side, and it's always really a fantastic experience when we can walk away from a farm and there's a bit of a relationship there and a bit of a rapport and a better understanding of farm practice. We are only able to do this successfully if people reach out and get in contact, but we're not big scary officers. Everyone's very similar to myself. We're often just looking for a yarn and looking to get everyone up to speed, because no one wants to be caught out on doing something that they don't even know is a breach, and it's no one's intention to breach the rules or to do anything that would affect their surrounding environment. So with that, if I don't think I added another slide in there, but with that, coming up to the intensive winter grazing season, if you have got a plan in place, if you've got your intensive winter grazing plan from last year, or if you've changed your pastures around a little bit and you're unsure of any spots, we are more than happy to come out and have a look, or even if you flick us an email, to have a look and to provide some guidance if we think there's any hairy spots. We're able to be contacted at compliance@orc.govt.nz, and yeah, that's pretty much everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Celeste. So yeah, that's the end of this presentation. So we will be hanging around for a bit online, but we'll stop the recording now, and this will be available online. And if you've seen this, that's probably where you're seeing it, and we're happy to send this around to other people. So thank you. But yeah.